Swagatam. Good morning. Namaskaram. This video is a continuation of the video I shared with you yesterday, in which I tried to present my take on why the opposition coalition is proving consistently ineffectual in its proclaimed goal of saving Indian democracy and averting the imminent danger according to their own perception. I will not repeat myself in this video. I would assume that the contents of the previous video are fresh with you. So let me proceed. In this video, I look at the second part of my argument, which is that the BJP under the leadership of Modi and Shah either does not understand the fundamentals of democracy or is using democracy as a cover-up to take India back to prehistoric times, to tribal times, where the subjects, the people did not matter, and they had to exist for the whims and pleasures of the rulers, of the tribal chieftains. So now, let's examine this proposition, that what Modi and Shah have been trying to implement in India is pseudo-democracy. You will remember that L.K. Advani popularized that very famous expression, pseudo-secularism and pseudo-secularists. Today I'm completing that cycle by saying that what we have witnessed from 2014 onwards is pseudo-democracy. Something else pretending to be democracy. Now, why do I say this? You will never come across anywhere in the history of the world a democratic society, a democratic country in which the emphatically stated goal of one of the parties is to eliminate all other parties so that the field will be left entirely as their monopoly, their preserve. You go back to 2013-14, Narendra Modi at that time, Amit Shah was not in the picture. Narendra Modi expressly stated that his goal was to make India free of the Congress Mukt Bharat. That is to say, at that time the Congress was and still is the principal opposition. He envisaged an India where there will be no opposition. Now, I don't have to say this to you, that a democracy in which there is no functioning opposition will not be democracy. Call it by any other name: dictatorship, tyranny, totalitarianism, even monarchy. But it would be wrong to call such a polity monarchy, because even in monarchy, the opposition was tolerated up to a point. But tolerance towards opposition is not the strength of monarchy. So, it amazes me that in this country of wonderful thinking geniuses, it did not occur to many that the stated intention of Narendra Modi to turn India into a Bharat Mukt country, Congress Mukt country, is actually a public declaration of the intention to undercut the very foundation of Indian democracy. Because the health of a democracy depends almost entirely on the robustness and the sense of health and responsibility of the opposition parties. The party in power is sure to abuse its power, especially if it perpetuates itself in office. The only way the welfare of the people, the sanity in the public space can be maintained, can be preserved, is through a functioning, principled opposition that's mindful of the welfare of the people. I would like to underline those three words: welfare of the people. And since then, we have to say this to the credit of Narendra Modi and subsequently of Amit Shah, that they have been pursuing their stated goal with absolute devotion, steadfastness, and brutal relentlessness. And that's how the instruments of the state came to be abused. Now, for example, you would have a politician who will be reviled on account of his proven venality and corruption, as in the case of Ajit Pawar, who was accused by Narendra Modi of stealing to the tune of 70,000 crores. It's not peanuts. The moment he gets into the BJP camp, he is washed clean. Everything, all his track record disappears. So it is not that the BJP was committed to morality in politics, as Gandhi said politics must be. He said politics without morality is evil, pure evil. It's not that Narendra Modi or Amit Shah is committed to morality in politics. It's only that they're weaponizing morality in order to decimate opposition. We know that every party that has held office anywhere in the state or union territory will have something absolutely indefensible in their track record. There's no doubt about it. So, weaponizing the instrumentalities of the state, the investigative instrumentalities of the state, in order to intimidate politicians who happen to be wielding power and therefore having opportunities to help themselves beyond legitimate bounds, is such an easy task. It's a low-hanging fruit. And all of us know, and we have been mute witnesses to this, in state after state, Operation Lotus was launched, and politicians after politicians from opposition parties were pumped out of their original habitat into the BJP turf. That's certainly part of the intended goal of decimating opposition and rendering Indian democracy, mind you, democracy, free of opposition altogether. The other tactic, of course, is turning the Election Commission of India into a branch office of the BJP. Since this is widely known, it's all there in the public domain, I presume that I don't have to say anything more about it. Then there are other issues, the capturing of almost all pillars of democracy, including, most unfortunately, the judiciary, a process which is still not complete, thank God. So all this is done in order to achieve that one central stated goal, namely to make India free of the opposition. Now, obviously, this is not democracy. So Rahul Gandhi was right, and many leaders in the opposition were right, as indeed the 4 judges of the Supreme Court of India, who in 2012, if I remember, in a press conference, for the first time in the history of India, 4 judges of the Apex Court held a press conference where they stated in explicit terms, at that time Ranjan Gogoi was the senior most judge in that group. He was not the Chief Justice yet at that time, but he was the senior most in the group of 4. They said that Indian democracy is in danger. But when Ranjan Gogoi became the Chief Justice of India, what he did, or whether or not he did anything at all, to bolster the cause of a democracy is a question that I need not have to ask. Historians will hold the Apex Court of India and its many functionaries not exactly in very high esteem in relation to the question whether or not the Supreme Court of India, which is the foremost guardian of the Constitution, under which Indian democracy is to be implemented, proved themselves equal to the task of defending the foundations of Indian democracy. Well, that's subject for another day. So, in any which way you can think of, Modi and Amit Shah have relentlessly, with single-heartedness of purpose, pursued this idea of eradicating opposition from Indian democracy. Now, what happens when opposition is eradicated from Indian democracy? Very simple. I don't have to go into very elaborate and sophisticated theories. Very pure and simple. People's welfare will become the first casualty. Because the moment a single party rule comes about, the party in power does not feel itself accountable to anyone. Please notice that the most powerful word today in the last 2 months, thanks to the cockroach revolution, is a word which we have long forgotten, namely accountability. The so-called cockroaches of India are crying out that India, as a functioning democracy, needs to regain its lost commitment to accountability in public life. Now, whether that is an anti-national activity or not depends on who looks at it. From BJP's point of view, clamoring that, clamoring that there should be accountability in public life is anti-national activity. Clamoring that there should be quality education accessible to the youth of India is anti-national activity. Insisting that a person in charge of the education at the national level should have exercised greater vigilance vis-a-vis discharging his duties by the youth of India is anti-national activity. And surprisingly, there's absolutely no qualms in saying this in public, because over the last 12 years, the BJP and its functionaries have got into this mindset whereby they think that they actually exist in a one-party rule system where there is no opposition, and they were not altogether wrong. That's why in the previous video I dealt with the ineffective nature of the Indian opposition and the reasons why they proved ineffectual. So when the opposition crumbles and the party in power becomes supreme, it deems itself accountable to no one. And in that context, the agenda that suffers most is the welfare of the people. So the state creates a collusion, a nexus between itself and the economic and ruling elite, and in contemporary language, the corporate giants. So de facto, we have witnessed the coming into being of a situation in which India became equated with the political ruling elite and the economic elite. The consequences are there for all to see. And for the ruling elite, for the economic elite, the educational development of India is not an agenda, leave alone a priority. They are least bothered about it. What the industrial capitals of India need is cheap labor. There, education is counterproductive. If education is withheld from people and employment situation is bad, you will have millions of young people lining up for low-paid jobs, and they would even be willing to work as industrial workers just to earn a pittance. So through this overall dismantling of the insidious, silent, indirect dismantling of the educational system, what is being achieved is actually a two-pronged advantage. One, the government does not have to bother itself about giving employment to the youth. As of now, 45% of India's young people are unemployed. You can imagine, it's a calamity in itself. And the fact that the opposition parties were not able to turn this into a crying national issue is an absolute shame. So, if the education system itself is dismantled gradually, surreptitiously, by indirect means, then the pressure on the government to generate employment almost evaporates. Secondly, it is through education, particularly higher education, that the young people develop the capacity to think. And then they become aware. The moment a person begins to think, what happens is he becomes aware of his own dignity. Dignity is the foundation of human birth. So a person with education begins to assume that he or she has personal worth. It's very easy to convince people without education and mental enlightenment that they are mere animals, and therefore they have no right to expect anything other than that. And this is clearly evident from the statement made by the Chief Justice of India that the unemployed youth of India are cockroaches and they are mere parasites. Now, here the Chief Justice of India was speaking the truth. So the nation must be absolutely grateful to the Chief Justice of India, Justice Suryakant, for telling the truth which other people don't. So the impact of this was volcanic on the youth of India, because suddenly they realized that they've been reduced to the level of cockroaches, and that their personal worth, the worth of every Indian youth, male or female, is seriously at risk. And they began to think that there is a conspiracy behind this. This is not an accident, but there is a deliberate intent behind it. The intent to undermine their worth, to reduce them to the state of worthlessness, irrelevance, by which they can be looked down upon as parasites on the Indian society. Now, the Chief Justice of India did not realize, at least there is no evidence that he realized, the explosiveness of what he was saying. Now, to understand that, what Justice Suryakant should have done, which he did not do, or it seems that he did not do, is to go back in time. Do you remember the election in which Vajpayee lost? An election that Vajpayee was sure to win? What was the reason for the debacle at that time? Just one slogan. What was that slogan? India is shining. Massive propagandist blitzkrieg was unleashed, trying to create an excitement all over India that under Vajpayee's leadership, under the NDA regime, India is hitting the roof, as it were. India is emerging as a great power. Now, this propaganda went everywhere. It reached the nook and corner of India. Then what happened? The ordinary people, the poor people, began to ask themselves, if India is shining, why are we in the state of misery? Now, if you examine history, you will find that whenever popular unrest reached its peak, two things operated at the same time. One is the perception that there is a lot of development, there is a lot of wealth generation. The second is that there is great inequality in the society. It's very important for you to understand this. Two factors have to come together if a society is to explode in resentment. One, the feeling, which is largely induced by the ruling disposition, that the country is doing very well. In fact, we have never done so well ever in our history. We are marching towards a paradise of development. That on the one side. And every day people are seeing this, every day people are hearing this. And on the other hand, what is their experience? They're going from bad to worse. The plight of most people other than the ruling economic political elite is becoming more and more precarious. My own condition as a retired person living on a pension is becoming more and more difficult. So if Modi or the propaganda gang of the BJP tell me that I'm doing very well, that my country is shining like the noonday sun, I would say, now what the heck? Look at my plight. So it will only serve to aggravate my resentment. I'm an old man, I will not express it, I'll just swallow it and keep quiet. But young people are not like that. So this idea of showcasing India's great achievement, India as a genuine rival to China, Narendra Modi as Vishwaguru, the whole world is looking up to him, and then Narendra Modi claiming that he's not of biological origin, he is of godly origin, and he has solution to all the problems. Modi hai to sab mumkin hai. If there is Modi, you have solution to all your problems. It's in the with this as a background that you need to see the erupting volcanic indignation and anger of the public, for which question paper leak served as a mere trigger. That's not the whole of it, it's only a trigger. So, the situation in this country is something that even today, and it surprises me no end, Modi and Amit Shah, shrewd, extraordinarily shrewd as both of them are, don't seem to understand. They think that by doing some gimmicks, they can control this process. In the next video, I'll say something more about the significance of the Cockroach Janata Party movement, which is a sequel to this. From my critique of the opposition party to my analysis of BJP and the road dispensation, I'll come to the Cockroach Janata Party movement and its significance. Now, how has Modi responded to this issue? He thinks still in the old mold. He thinks that by doing some propaganda gimmick, he can overcome this. So what did he do? Well, Gen Z are natives to Instagram. So I will also go into Instagram. They produce a lot of selfie videos. I will also do some selfie videos. And if previously I used to address people as Bhayo Bhano, now I'll say friends. And he thinks that the entire youth of India will fall flat. Now, this is the poverty of thinking, completely out of touch with the realities of today, particularly the realities about Gen Z, which he does not understand. I'm sorry to say he doesn't have a clue. Now, the RSS is also pushed into this. So you had a program showcasing the RSS Search Chalak Mohan Bhagwat in conversation with a jazzy young man. The Search Chalak trying to express or create an impression of being in solidarity with Gen Z, etc., etc. And it is assumed that this will pay off. My conviction is that it will not pay off. Why? I tell you why. You see, in olden days, my generation went from one day to another, one experience to another. We never thought in a connected manner. We did not hold our experiences together in the basket of our life and then evaluate, assess everything. Moreover, our ability to think freely was inhibited by authority. Now, what I'm going to say now is extremely important. I'll spend a little time, please have patience, because it's important that you understand this. I would recommend to Narendra Damodar Das Modi that he find time to read one essay. That essay is by Hannah Arendt, Arendt. The title of that essay is Authority. Authority. This is an essay all of us must read. Now, one of the important insights is a historical observation that Hannah makes in that very interesting, very well-researched, well-written essay, is that the youth of today, she was writing about 80 years ago, she says the youth of today do not recognize any authority. The first, it's very important for Narendra Modi to understand this, because he has cast himself in the authoritarian mold. That's why he has a tendency to go back in history and say that, in the prehistoric times, we had plastic surgery, we had stem cell research, and we had Pushpak Viman, we had missiles in the form of Agni, arrows and fire-breathing arrows, all the rest of it goes all the way back. Charles Dickens says jocularly about a character that he could trace his ancestry way back, far back to the time when his ancestors lived on the tree. He could trace his family tree far enough to the time when his ancestors lived on the tree. So it's Narendra Modi takes great pride in saying that our past was like this. I'm not saying that our past is unimportant. As Indians, we must be proud of our past. But as Indians who have some sense, we must also realize that we can't live in the past. Life is to be lived today with an eye to the future, in which experience the good lessons, the great insights, the great achievements of the past, cultural, spiritual, etc., of the past must be made use of, the best use of. So, what Narendra Modi does not understand and what he needs to understand, what the RSS needs to understand is that we are living in an entirely different world. If you look at the RSS, it's a purely authoritarian structure. From within the RSS, you cannot ask a question, you cannot question the Sarsanjalak, the supremo of the RSS, Mohan Bhagwat. So it's a heavy top-down system. There's a one system that Gen Z will never accept. They will hold it to ridicule. And what Narendra Modi, having been hardwired in the RSS movement and having served as a pracharak of the RSS movement, his mind is hardwired in this authoritarian, top-down system, mindset, approach, thinking, strategy, etc., etc. So he thinks that by making 3, 4, 5 Instagram videos late in the night, by trying to speak the language of the Gen Z, he will carry the day. The truth of the matter is, as we have learned from Hannah Arendt, the youth, even 8 years ago, and much more now, the youth of today, they are contemptuous of authority. They are not intimidated or overawed like my generation was by the authority of any kind. In fact, Hannah Arendt very clearly says that the youth of today rebel against authority in every form, and she mentions 3 locations of authority, locales of authority. One is religion. Therefore, you find, if you have watched the Gen Z movement at Jantar Mantar, you would find that young people broke all religious barriers, religious caste barriers, gender barriers. They have absolutely no use for any of this stuff. So, if you try to talk to them in the form of a religious authority, so the kind of image that Narendra Modi built up about himself as a religious, spiritual sage, going and sitting in meditation, whether it is Vivekananda Memorial Rock or Badrinath or Kedarnath, whatever it is, or dedicating the temple of Ayodhya, a new parliament, where he is the pujari. And obviously that kind of image will wash very well with my generation. But with the Gen Z, it's counterproductive. That's what he doesn't understand. It is purely counterproductive. Secondly, the Gen Z today will go entirely by their experience, not by what you say or somebody else says. For example, Prime Minister Modi tries to strike up a friendly poster towards Gen Z through these videos and through the many statements he is now making. And Mohan Bhagwat is trying to do that from the RSS side. Members of Parliament, BJP members of Parliament are using the Gen Z lingo in the Parliament and taking great pride in it. As though by parroting some Gen Z slang or lingo, they will win over the present generation. Nothing can be more foolish, more absurd than this. When the young person looks at it, here's a prime minister who allows the young people to be brutally beaten up, young girls to be molested and humiliated in the open at Jantar Mantar. Metal pellets being used against them. And in Bihar, AK-47 rifle. All that is completely erased, and the Prime Minister in the comfort of his seat says, friends. What sort of impact would this have on Gen Z? Or for that matter, the hyperactivity after Gen Z struck the streets to create foolproof systems for conducting examination. Why couldn't that be done 12 years ago? If you had any concern for the youth of India, you would have done it 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So it's not that you really want to do it, it's that you know now there's no alternative to doing it, and therefore you're doing it most reluctantly. And that's a message not lost on Gen Z. They understand all of this. Or for that matter, a BJP hothead goes and hurls ink at, what's her name? Neha Bora, one of the Cockroach Janata Party leaders who sat on hunger strike with, what's his name? Anyway, she goes to be with the youth striking in Chhattisgarh, and she's attacked. And the young person who attacked her was doing it on behalf of BJP. So Gen Z is being attacked everywhere, and then Prime Minister says friends. Do you think young people will be fooled with all of this? In fact, it will become all the more counterproductive because young people will come to the conclusion that it is nothing but a grand drama of deception. And they hate it. They hate it absolutely. You deliver the goods and they will take you seriously. They have certain real agenda, real needs. They are seriously concerned. They're earnest about it. You have nothing in your hand to give them hope or assurance that tomorrow will be better than today. There's not even an indication that you're inclined to think of it. And then you think you can make a few videos and win them over, heart and soul. I think you're living in a fool's paradise. So the BJP, and I'll conclude on that, is today paying the price for its success. One of the ironies of history, please remember my words, one of the ironies of history is that you're defeated by your victories. You're crushed under the burden of your achievements. That is, if your victories and achievements are immoral, not based on sound, humanistic, moral, ethical, spiritual principles. You may build a lot, you may achieve a lot, but as Jesus said, it will be like the foolish man building his mansion on a foundation of sand. It will crumble. It's an imperative of history. It has to happen, it will happen. If not today, tomorrow. If not tomorrow, the day after. That it will crumble is absolutely certain. So, out of my personal appreciation for, my liking for Modi, I'm saying this. He needs to understand the present situation, right? The situation has changed so drastically in this country the last 2 months. 2 months. I'll say more about it in the next video. We are now living in an entirely different India. For the last 12 years, Narendra Modi has been flexing every muscle, straining every nerve, investing every hour into building a new India. And a handful of young people have in fact inaugurated their own new India. That is the irony. That should open the eyes of everyone, including the opposition parties. Every person should open his eyes and see this. A handful of young people with no money, no influence, no structure, no organization, no great wealth of experience, they have inaugurated a new India for themselves. And in the days ahead, we will see if there is going to be some conversation, some dialogue between Modi's new India and the new India of the cockroaches. That will be the quintessence of the history of India to be played out in the next 10 years. 10 years. Please bear these words in mind. You will see that this is exactly what's going to happen. And whether or not Rahul Gandhi understands this, and whether he will sincerely attach his heart, his soul to this new vision that history itself produced using a handful of insignificant people, young people, and pursue it to their logical conclusion, will actually determine his own position in the history of India. Whether he is Pappu or whether he is really the man of the moment for India will be decided on this one question: whether or not he understands the message unfurled by the Cockroach Janata Party movement and absorbs its spirit and articulates it in the political life of India. That's the one thing on which everything hinges, both for Rahul Gandhi and for the country as a whole. Jai Hind.